Hey everybody, my name's Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how I turned an old patio like this into a new patio like this with a beautiful herringbone paver pattern on modern builds. So this is Caleb. You may know him from previous modern builds projects like IKEA hacks and other great hits.
This is his patio and it needs a little bit of TLC. The paver bricks have never quite lined up and the foundation just isn't done right. So we're gonna update this for a modern, clean look with a herringbone paver pattern. As you may have guessed, the first step for this project was to get the old patio pavers out of here, and it became really apparent really quick just why the bricks never quite lined up. Typically when you install a paver patio, you want a gravel base. That way roots and weather don't affect the alignment of your pavers. Of course I don't know, but it looks like they just leveled out the patio site and put bricks down right on top of dirt when they built the house. That's why everything's settled. No big deal though, we're gonna fix that and I'm gonna show you how to. This plastic picket fence isn't exactly adding to the look of this whole patio, so we're gonna remove that. I have plans later on to replace this with a cool, modern fence, so make sure and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can see when that video goes live. I was happy to see that that first post came out no problems, but this second one was really anchored in.
Holy crap. One of the big things I want to do for this space is expand the patio. In the past, it came to right here, about 8 feet past that fence. I'm going to double it all the way to about 15 feet.
To get started, I grabbed a shovel and I removed a lot of dirt. I'll be laying down a 4-inch thick layer of gravel patio base and a 1-inch thick layer of sand to put my pavers on. This is gonna make sure that everything stays flat and in plane. That way we don't have the same problem as this original patio. And while I was doing all this digging, I unearthed a ton of roots. And I think this was one of the big problems contributing to the original patio's misalignment. The neighbor's tree has roots that go right underneath the patio, so I grabbed a pruning blade for my sawzall and I cut all of those roots out. This definitely wasn't a fun process, but totally necessary. I needed to be thorough along the fence and the house line to make sure that all the roots were gone and they weren't going to cause future problems. This is probably a good time for a disclaimer to make sure that you always check with your service providers to make sure you don't have any water or power lines underneath your dig site that you might cut into.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts about partnering with Home Depot for this project is that they offer delivery for all of my bulk materials. All of my paver base, sand, as well as all of my pavers were delivered right to my job site. This saved me a ton of time and effort, and I couldn't recommend it more. I mentioned earlier on in the video that I'm installing a 4-inch thick layer of this patio paver base from Pavestone. And the reason that my base layer is so thick is because of all of these dang roots. But if it wasn't for that, I would do a base layer of 2 inches thick. I'm expecting a common question down in my comments to be, why didn't I buy my paver base in bulk? The reason is because I couldn't get a dump truck or anything back there to get the bulk material close to the paver site. These individual bags actually made everything way more convenient. And once I had the majority of my paver base down, I wanted to make sure that I was grading everything properly. You don't want your patio to be perfectly flat, instead you want it to slope away from your house, that way water drains properly. So here I'm laying out lines and running string between the stakes to make sure everything's graded properly. The string closest to the house is an inch below the bottom of where I want my paver to be. That's going to account for the layer of sand I'll install next. Then I used a string and a line level to make a perfectly level mark on the opposite stake. From there, I could measure and mark a line that accounts for the proper slope for drainage that I want, 1 inch over every 8 feet.
Now, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I'm genuinely impressed with myself with how close I got to the lines on this.
These lines are just here to show any high points or low points that I need to either add or move mix from. So I just threw out some more bags where I knew I needed more base material and then raked everything even.
Right now, I'm outside of Home Depot's tool rental, and I'm about to pick up a plate compactor for the day. Now, a plate compactor is obviously something that I don't use all the time, so it's awesome having access to such a great library of tools that I can rent out for such a fair price.
This could happen.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the help.
Sure thing.
See you later today.
The plate compactor has a water reservoir on it that slowly drips as you're compacting everything to keep the dust down. But really, it's simple. You just go back and forth in alternating patterns to make sure that your base is compacted as nicely as possible.
So things really couldn't be going better. It's been raining lightly for the past couple days, which has packed this paver base down super solid. My next step is to lay down and level sand, and to do that, I'm gonna be doing a process called screeching. These are 1-inch thick PVC pipes, and I'll use these along with a straight 2x4 to level out all the sand once I lay it down.
It's important that whenever you're screeding this sand that you have as straight of a 2x4 as you can find. But really this process is super simple and it reminds me of doing concrete work, so it wasn't too unfamiliar. The real trick to this whole thing is to just go with the flow. You don't want to try and muscle everything around because then you might dig in somewhere or put too much pressure on a certain point to make your base not level. Occasionally I would have a rock or something interfere with me leveling out the base, but I would just get rid of it, fill that spot with sand, and go back over it with the 2x4. No big deal. After removing the PVC pipes, I filled in those voids with sand and I smoothed everything out with a trowel. And now it's just game time. It's time to lay down these patio pavers for real. And I don't have any more advice than just saying constantly measure whatever reference points you have. So for me, I knew the distance I wanted to be away from the house as well as the distance I wanted to be from the existing sidewalk. So each time I laid down a new row, I measured all of my margins and made sure that they stayed consistent. If that was the case, then I knew I was making proper 45-degree herringbone patterns. Now, I'm not going to pretend like this wasn't a lot of work, but it was really satisfying to see all of this come together so quickly. As my patio grew, I could measure less often and just trust that this cluster of pavers was laid down proper. As long as my pieces continued to fit snug, then it was reassuring knowing I was going in the right direction. I also found that a dead blow mallet was great for seating all of my pavers together for a snug fit. But realistically, there's not a ton more advice. Just keep measuring as you go and make sure that your bed is always flat. From there, if you continue to get tight spacing in all of your pavers, you're on the right path. I will say though, by the end of a full day of laying down patio pavers, I was happy to be done. Now that all the pavers are down, it's time to cut the perimeter square. This is the one challenge of creating a herringbone pattern that really doesn't exist in a straightforward square grid pattern. To cut the perimeter, I rented this giant 12-inch demo saw from Home Depot. The first thing I did after snapping my chalk lines was to score the line that I wanted to cut around the perimeter. That way when I do my full plunge cut, I've already got a groove cut to guide the blade. Now, it definitely wasn't perfectly straight, but as I went around the perimeter of this patio, I was able to get straighter and straighter lines and control the saw better. And after making that score around the outside of the bricks, I realized the saw actually had a garden hose attachment. That way, water could be running as you cut. Quick pro tip, if you're using pavers similar to mine, don't use an abrasive disc like what I have here. What I found is that it wasn't able to plunge very well into these concrete pavers. I think it was just a little bit too hard of a material for the abrasive disc to handle. It sparked up quite a bit, was kind of hard to control, not to mention, it didn't even get through one of the full sides before the disc wore away. So after this, I ran back to Home Depot and I picked up a diamond tooth blade. Now this is what they use to cut through concrete and asphalt and roadways, and it cut through these patio pavers no problem. I already mentioned it earlier, and I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything, but as you can see, my lines weren't perfectly straight. But it's really cool to see later on in the video, once I put a perimeter around this patio, how much all of those small imperfections blend out and look crystal clean. And while I'm in the middle of the dustiest part of this project, I'd like to give a big thanks to RZ Mask, who's a longtime sponsor of Modern Builds. They make the M2.5 dust mask that I've been wearing this entire project. It's super lightweight, comfortable and convenient, and the extra elastic strap that goes around the top of the head provides a better seal around my nose and keeps the whole dust mask in place while I'm moving around all day. To learn more, follow the link down in the description and use the code ModernBuilds at checkout and you'll always get a discount. I kept it simple on all of my edges that weren't joining up to the house or the existing sidewalk and just laid down a single layer of bricks. But on those edges next to the house, I laid down a perimeter of 2 bricks thick. I just thought this would look a little bit more intentional and nice. In hindsight though, I probably shouldn't have kept such tight margins because these bricks were really tough to install in a couple of places. Next, I laid down some temporary edging to keep all of my bricks in place so that nothing shifted on me over the next couple of steps. I'm going to be laying down what's called polymeric sand, and before I do that, I needed to brush my pavers clean. Polymeric sand is to pavers what grout is to tile. It fills in all of the gaps and is activated with water. That allows the binding agents that's in the sand to solidify everything together and fill all of those voids. The cool thing about polymeric sand too is that it comes in all different shades and colors to match whatever bricks you're using. I got gray sand to match my bricks and it really blended out all of those imperfections that I talked about earlier. This made everything look so clean. The biggest piece of advice that I have here is to broom in multiple directions, especially if you're doing a complicated pattern like what I have here. That way all of the voids get filled evenly. If you have any sand sitting on the surface of the pavers, they'll create a haze effect similar to grout on tile too. So you want to make sure and broom everything off really well. You can also use a leaf blower if you have that. The nice thing about this fence, even though it need updated, is that it had only been stained in the past, so I didn't have any paint chips to worry about. I could just grab the push broom and make sure the face of the panels were clean, then get to painting. I decided to paint the fence flat black with bare ultra exterior. This worked really well with a high nap roller. I was able to get entire coverage with a single coat. The timing for this plug may be a little bit random, but I figure, why not? If you listen to podcasts, you should check out the show that I do every week called the Modern Maker Podcast with my friends Chris Salamone from Four Eyes Furniture and Ben Ueda from Homemade Modern. It's a really fun show that we do every Thursday. Links will be in the description. Check it out if you're already a fan of podcasts. While the paint on the fence was curing, I grabbed some pressure-treated 1x6s and I painted them black to match the fence. These are essentially going to be used as baseboards on the fence to help clean everything up. I'll be using Gorilla heavy-duty construction adhesive to attach these boards to the fence along with a few deck screws. It's funny, I dug so deep for the paver base that I actually exposed the bottom ends of these fence panels. I was really worried when I realized what I did, but I sat back and thought about it for a while, and even though I've really never seen anybody do baseboard for a fence like this, it actually looks really nice.
And these boards are like $5 a piece.
After those boards were installed, I grabbed some more of those pressure-treated 1x6s and painted those black. These are going to be used as the edger boards along all of the garden beds and the perimeter of the pavers. After all of those boards were installed, I made one final Home Depot run to pick up everything for the garden beds. I grabbed 3 large snake plants that are going to be the focal point of this whole wall, along with 2 smaller ones to fill everything out. Then I laid down a couple of bags of topsoil, installed all of my snake plants, then I could lay marble chips all around my garden bed for a clean, modern look. And with that, this patio is done. Man, that feels good to say. Now, before I show you the big reveal of this transformation, let's go back and see what this patio looked like at day 1. It was out of date, the pavers were an ugly brown color, and nothing really lined up. Not to mention, the patio was about half the size it is now. So let's check out this after.
So I really hope you guys enjoyed this project and learned something from it. If you did, make sure and click that thumbs up. That way YouTube just knows to recommend this video more often. And if you're not already, make sure and hit that subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you stay updated every time I post new project videos. I'd like to give one more huge thanks to Home Depot and Pavestone for making this video possible. If you're interested in learning more about the products I used from Home Depot, make sure and follow the link down in the description. There, I've also written a full step-by-step blog article detailing this entire process. So thanks again for watching, everybody, and until next time, this has been Modern Builds.